So the heavy class is probably the best class in the finals for those who are able to play it well. It is so damn tanky, and honestly you almost can't win tournaments without a good heavy player on your team. And so today we're going through a fundamental guide on how to play the heavy class. Now I have already done one of these videos for both the light and medium classes too, so be sure to go and check those out if you do enjoy this one. And if you are new around here, be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications. There is plenty more finals content on the way. But with that being said, let's get stuck right into it. Now, quickly touching on just the overall playstyle before I get into the loadout breakdown and all that kind of thing. The easiest way to explain your overall playstyle as a heavy is very, very easy to explain. You are essentially just a tank, and your role is to pretty much absorb as much damage as possible, mostly through shielding, and then obviously just your high health pool, which will then obviously draw the attention of enemies and therefore let your teammates do their thing. On top of that, you will also need to play somewhat of a support role in using your mesh and dome shields to protect teammates, whether that is in the middle of the gunfight, letting them be the ones to fire back and kill your enemies while you tank all of the damage, or when they're trying to steal the cash out or generally just defend it. Your shields and overall damage absorption are key for those situations. Like I mentioned, your team almost needs a good heavy to win games, at least in this super competitive matches anyway, so it is arguably one of the most crucial roles you can play in getting consistent wins in the finals. Now, getting into the loadout side of things, when it comes to these specializations, what I will say is that easily the best of the bunch is the mesh shield. It turns you into a genuine bullet sponge, and it will save your life more often than not. And on top of that can be the difference between winning and losing by how much it helps your teammates. In my opinion, it is not really worth using the other two specializations. Don't get me wrong, they are both fun to use and they're still decent. They can still definitely help you win games. But in my opinion, in a competitive match anyway, in terms of having, good opponents on the other teams, you will absolutely miss the mesh shield if you run one of the other specializations. And so, at least for me, it is pretty much never worth switching that out. I think I would honestly go as far as saying that the mesh shield is probably the best single specialization in the entire game. It is so crucial, and honestly, if you're not running this and you aren't playing the heavy properly, then you are going to find it very, very hard to win games, at least when it comes to tournaments and especially ranked tournaments. Now, moving on to the weapon side of things, realistically, there isn't that many choices for the heavy class. There's only 5, and 2 of them are not, ideal for most situations. Now, the most common that I see good players running is the SA-1216, the automatic shotgun, which is unstoppable up close, and this thing is definitely the best for close quarters. So if you do enjoy playing a little bit more up close and personal, then I would definitely say the SA-1216 is probably the weapon for you. Now, when it comes to my own favorite, that is the Lewis gun. Personally, I just really enjoy the iron sights. It has very manageable recoil, and it does still have a good magazine size while still being a very quick reload. So this is the one that I generally run most of the time. I do always have the SA-1216 in my reserve as well though, which obviously in a ranked tournament doesn't really mean anything, but in all the other modes it is very handy to be able to switch out whenever I need to. Now for me, I would say it is really just between these two weapons. The other choices are definitely fun and you can still use them. They are still viable options, but I do just think that these two in the SA-1216 and the Lewis gun are the overall best weapons for this class. Now moving on to the gadgets, and with the heavy, in my opinion, there are 2 non-negotiables that you absolutely must run. These being both the dome shield and then the RPG. Now the dome shield is super clutch for mostly when you actually need to reload or heal up. It is obviously very helpful for your teammates as well, but if you're running the mesh shield, that is generally better for protecting teammates because it's got a lot more health and it is obviously mobile. However, the dome shield, it is very clutch for when you're low on health, for example, or maybe you're in the middle of a gunfight and you really need to reload but someone's sort of pressing you from a distance. You can just chuck down the dome shield, reload in safety, maybe even get a little bit of health back, and then push on from there. So yeah, the dome shield is an absolutely clutch gadget, and I pretty much can't live without it now when I'm playing in the heavy class. Now, in terms of the RPG, this one is super useful for essentially just being a wrecker and bringing buildings or walls down to reveal camping enemies on the objectives. And sometimes it is even just useful for literally just making your path a little bit easier. Instead of having to run all the way around a building or something like that, you can obviously just blow up the wall and run straight through there, because obviously as a heavy you do have slower movement. So it is really good for those situations, essentially just bringing down buildings and being a bit of a chaos bringer to those situations. On top of that, it is also a very viable option when it comes to dealing damage as well. If you see enemies grouped up on the objective, for example, you can deal an insane amount of damage to an entire team. You're probably not going to get a heap of kills with it unless they are the light class. However, if there's 3 mediums, for example, right on the objective trying to heal each other or something, and you can hit all of them at once, it is going to cause them to absolutely shit themselves, but also deal enough damage that you and your teammates can easily clean them up by just essentially pushing in and using your regular weapons. So not only is it good for the, I guess, bringing down buildings and stuff like I said, but it is very, very solid at dealing damage as well. Now, as for the third gadget, I do prefer to run the gas grenade just for kind of some point presence with the objective. So that means essentially being able to throw it down and it's going to block the enemy team from trying to steal, for example. Even just blocking off an area where you know the enemy team's going to push through, but maybe you need to reload or you're low health, for example. Just putting gas down can, I guess, make people think twice before pushing in, and that is what I mean by a bit of point presence. So I do personally prefer the gas grenade, but to be honest, you can pretty much use any of the other gadgets for this third slot. Most of the other ones are really solid, so I'd say give them all a try and see what you like the most, but at least for me, it is the gas grenade. Now, when it comes to, I guess, some key tips to remember when you are playing as the heavy class, like I mentioned, this class is an absolute tank, and you want to be sure to treat this class that way. You want to throw yourself in front of bullets to save your teammates and obviously pop the mesh and dome shields to take a bit of the heat off. Essentially, what you want to be doing is just trying to make the enemies focus on you, because once they do, obviously you can tank a lot of that damage, but then that is going to free up your teammates to make very quick work of them while they're distracted. If you're just eating bullets from the enemy team, not only are they going to eventually run out of ammo, but they are, like I said, completely distracted, and your teammate can maybe pull off a flank and get some very easy kills and therefore get some very easy team wipes. Now, not only is the heavy class really good at being a bullet sponge, but on top of that, they are also really good at getting plenty of kills and just generally dealing plenty of damage. You can send so much damage down range, and you absolutely should be doing that as much as possible. Being a heavy, you are going to win more gunfights than you lose, simply because you have more health than most other players. Even though I do honestly think the heavy class is probably the best class in the game, at least the easiest to pick up anyway, I actually very rarely come across all that many heavies, and so I've actually been in a lot of lobbies where I'm the only heavy, and therefore I literally have got more health than every single other player. And obviously in that situation, if you're in a one-on-one gunfight, it is pretty rare you're going to lose that unless they're an absolute freak or potentially you are a bot in that situation. So because of that, you want to absolutely make the most of that. With that being said, don't get carried away, don't get ahead of yourself. Just because you do have more HP, that doesn't mean you are invincible, but just use that to your advantage. You want to kind of push them. For example, if a light class is pushing a heavy, the light will try and be really sneaky and kind of keep dodging around and all that kind of thing. That is their smart way of playing that situation. Whereas if you are the heavy in that situation, your main way of attacking them is literally just to charge at them and try and keep them in your line of sight as much as possible. Because like I said, if you just trade damage with the other enemy, you are most likely going to win in that gunfight. Now, lastly, you also want to try and stick near your teammates as much as possible. If you do have a healer on your team, they can make you even tankier, because any damage you are actually taking, they can almost heal all of that back if they are sitting close enough and healing constantly. And then if you do have a light on your team as well, you can kind of wait for them to engage with the enemies and distract them. If you don't know what I'm talking about, be sure to go and check out the light guide that I also did, talking about being a bit of an infiltrator and a disruptor. And once your light player has done that, the enemy team is going to be distracted, at which point you can then move in and pretty much just clean up the rest of the squad with your other teammate as well. But obviously that comes down to a lot of coordination. So definitely stick with your teammates. It makes playing the heavy class a lot better. Not only for yourself, you're going to stay alive longer if you've got a healer, but on top of that, it is going to help your teammates a hell of a lot too, being able to absorb some of that damage and essentially just be a distraction to where they can get a hell of a lot of kills and allow you guys to take those objectives. I'm keen to hear all of your thoughts on this video though. Let me know of anything you guys disagree with, or just any tips of your own for those reading in the comments. I'm always keen to hear your thoughts. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there in the arena.